Hi, everybody. This is Bob Gale, co-creator of Back to the Future, and you're listening to Brad Gilmore.
Doc! Okay, relax, Doc. It's me. It's Marty.
No, it can't be. Just sent you back to the future.
Yeah. Oh, I know you did send me back to the future, but I'm back. I'm back from the future.
Great Scott.
Wait a minute, Doc. Are you telling me that you built a time machine? Out of a DeLorean?
The way I see it, if you're gonna build a time machine into a car, why not do it with some style?
Whoa, this is heavy.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Back to the Future, the podcast, the only podcast looking back in time. The greatest film trilogy of all time. Back to the Future. I'm your friend in time, Brad Gilmore. I've been sitting here in my studio torturing myself. I thought I'd take a pause to give y'all time to think of what that might mean. Torturing myself by not cracking the spine on creating Back to the Future, the musical by Michael Clastorin. I still have been meaning to reach out to Michael. I'm actually going to add that to my to-do list after the show and reach out to him so we can set something up. After I see Back to the Future, the musical, I want to do a sit-down, like I said, with the wife in the hotel room afterward. Looking forward to that for season 10. And I want to talk to Michael. He did this one. He also did the Ultimate Visual History, which I relied on a lot for the book project that I worked on for Back to the Future, which, you know what, we'll talk about more stuff when we get into the show itself. We're going to do some letters from Western Union again this week with some listener questions that were sent in, some theories that have been floating out there that I thought that we could address as a family of pinheads. And I want to shout out to everybody who's reached out, sending great notes and just things that they've heard in the episodes. I know that there's so many great Back to the Future fans out there, and that we all can kind of convene together. And you know, y'all hear me talk about my ramblings, but I am no expert. I am not a Back to the Future expert. I guarantee almost everybody out there knows more than me about Back to the Future that's listening to this show right now. But guess what? We're going to talk about Back to the Future a little bit more in Letters from Western Union number 2 here on season 10 of Back to the Future, the podcast. And welcome back to Back to the Future, the podcast, season 10. We're going to do some letters from Western Union, get into some listener questions. And again, I was talking about in the intro, Michael Clastorin. I want to get him on. There's been several people I've talked to over the years, just never been able to make it work. Ricky Dean Logan, we've talked a lot about. J.J. Cohen, we've talked. Dangerous Bob, he and I have talked. I've been in contact with Michael J. Fox's people, just never able to line that one up. Him and Michael J. Fox and Tom Wilson are still the dream gets. But, you know, here's the thing. I heard Pete Davidson, who some of y'all might know, he's on SNL for a long time. He's known for his Bacalayan adventures, for lack of a better term as well. He was on Howard Stern, and he was talking about how big of a fan he was of Jack Nicholson, and he had the opportunity to meet Jack. Lauren Michaels called him up one day and said, hey, you know, we're having Jack over at the house. Why don't you come meet us so you can meet Jack? And Pete Davidson turned the opportunity down. And when you first are thinking about it, you're like, who would turn down an opportunity to meet Jack Nicholson? And then when Pete explained it, he said, what would I add to that conversation? You know, what experiences do I have that Jack would find interesting? And he said, I couldn't live with Jack Nicholson not liking me, because he just respects him so much. And a lot of the times, I'm not going to lie to y'all, when I do these projects or I do these interviews, like the book project, I was so worried that somebody might read it and from the Back to the Future world and not like it, or didn't like how something was characterized, or didn't like a quote that was used, or something, right? Or just didn't think it was very good, which I'm very critical about everything that I do. To be quite honest, I don't know why I'm being so transparent right now, but it's just on my spirit, I guess. I'm just so critical of everything that I do. There's been several times where I finish this podcast, I put it out, and then I think, man, that was not a very good podcast. I could have done that better. which I guess is good in some parts. But like the Back to the Future book, again, I mean, if I had a retake at it, there's a lot that I would probably do differently. But it comes also with knowing more. I mean, I started writing that book 4 years ago. 4 years ago is when I started. And I'd never written anything long form like that before. The longest thing I had written was a college essay. And the publishing company just liked the podcast and wanted to adapt it in some way. And I didn't really have a clear thing that I wanted to talk about with Back to the Future. I just thought, oh, maybe if I do this, if I do that, if I do that. And then we did the paperback that corrected some of the errors in the first one. Because again, by the way, if anybody ever out there writes a book, make sure you have a great copy editor that you bring in independently to check your work, especially somebody who's knowledgeable about the property. Because there were just some things that when you work on as an individual, you just don't catch. And even when you go back and edit and reread and rewrite, you still don't catch them. And if you're showing it to your publisher, well, they don't know anything about Back to the Future, or at least they have a casual understanding of it. So they're going to miss the things that were mistakes. And then when it comes out, you feel like an idiot. There was like one part of the book where I called Lou's Cafe Lou's Diner. And it's just one of those things where you're writing quickly and you're not thinking, and you don't have somebody to get your back. And, my point is, if Leah Thompson, whom I have an incredible amount of respect for, I love Leah Thompson, not only what she's done in Back to the Future, how passionate she is about the causes that she supports, about how artful she is about her directing and her ability. Leah Thompson is an incredible on the surface from anything that I know about her. And I don't know her personally. We've only shared a couple messages in one interview together 3 years ago. But everything that I know about her, read about her, have seen her in, have seen her do, have seen her say, incredible human being. Christopher Lloyd, incredible human being. Bob Gale, Bob Zemeckis, incredible. Crispin Glover, Jeffrey Weissman, Francis McCain, Don Fullerlove, Harry Waters, Michael J. Fox, Tom Wilson. Claudia Wells. Anyone else that I've talked to or gotten to know through this podcast or through that project, I have so much respect for. And honestly, anything that I do Back to the Future related, including the book project, I'm not bursting any bubbles here, but I think a lot of people know, unless you move significant, and I'm talking 100,000, 200,000 plus, and probably more than that, books. You're not making a ton of money. It's like releasing songs. I'm a musician, and you release a song on Spotify or what have you. You're not making a ton of money unless you're the Drakes or the Taylor Swifts or the whomevers, people at the tippy top. You can make some money, pay off a couple expenses. But my point is, all these Back to the Future things I've done have only really, truly been off the love of it. And it resonated to me when Pete Davidson said that, because I think all the time when I put something out, or especially about the book project, I think, man, I hope no one dislikes me for that. Pinheads, can y'all help me through my crisis I'm having? But anyway, again, I have so much love for this series and for the people who created the series. And like Pete Davidson said, not that I have any reason to believe that I'm in the bad graces of anybody, but just I understood what he meant, because when you hold people in such high regard, you always want to make sure that your respect is being felt, and no other feelings are ever being had. How did I get on that diatribe? I'm not sure, but that's just a bit of honesty. So, Michael Klastorin wrote the book on this. The complete visual history was something I referenced a lot when writing the Back to the Future book. And I use Cassine Gaines a lot. I use a lot of those commentaries on the DVDs and Blu-rays. And I would really look forward to reaching out to Michael, talking to him, Dangerous Bob, J.J. Cohen, Ricky Dean Logan, friend of mine, Jen Sturger. We've talked a lot about doing it. She's a big nerd and a big Back to the Future fan. There's so many people who I still would love to talk to, but Michael J. Fox and Tom Wilson would be big gets. But I would just be so nervous to talk to them. And again, I would be just as interested in talking to Michael J. Fox about Parkinson's research, being that my grandmother died from Parkinson's, and in really understanding more about where the research has been. Because in 2016, when she passed, from her diagnosis in 2000, 2001-ish, all the way through 2016, when she died in her 90s, or she was 90 years old exactly, I did a lot of research about Parkinson's and where it came from and its origins and the things they were doing to treat it and the carbidopa, levodopa, and all the stuff. And then since her passing, I will say, although I support Michael J. Fox Foundation, I make periodic donations. And you know what? Speaking to the book project, I'm going to make a vow right now. Any dollar that I make from Back from the Future, the book, from this point on, will be 100% donated to the Michael J. Fox Foundation. Every dollar. So if you're listening now, you want to go purchase the book, go ahead and do so, because every dollar that I make from it, I'm donating to the Michael J. Fox Foundation for Parkinson's research. But anyway, I would love to talk to them. But let's get into some of these questions. I've talked long enough to you all about my anxieties and insecurities and my fearfulness of interviewing my idols. So let's talk here. Let's chat. Let's go to some of the questions that I got. That there's not a lot of them that we're going to jump into in the mailbag here, but there are a few. And I want to shout out on this one. This is from Scott Nelson. Scott Nelson sent me this message. Nelson is my grandmother's maiden name, speaking of my grandmother. Here is his message from Scott. So, Scott, if you're listening, hidey-ho, mate. Brad, on your last Back to the Future podcast, a guy wrote in asking about why they don't note the seconds when lightning strikes the clock tower at 10:04 p.m. and how that could affect the DeLorean hitting 88 miles per hour. Yes, we did talk about that extensively in Letters from Western Union 1. And again, I always thought, because Doc freestyles precisely when he's talking about Marty, when he's talking to Marty about the lightning storm and the Save the Clock Tower flyer that he had. But I said, well, what about the seconds? Like, how do they know the seconds? And I took precisely to mean it was like right on the tick. He says, I recently purchased the cast recording of Back to the Future, the musical, and on track 12, they state the lightning struck the clock tower at exactly 10:04 p.m. I just wanted to pass that on. Well, there you go. See, I haven't listened to the soundtrack intentionally. I haven't read the book, as we talked about, intentionally until I get to actually see the musical in New York here in a couple months. So I wouldn't have known that, but that makes sense. Right? To be there right on the tick. Thank you for writing that one in, Steve. We really appreciate that one. This comes from a Reddit board, question on the Reddit board about the time circuits in Back to the Future Part 2. Let's read this one. In Back to the Future Part 2, it's foreshadowed earlier on in the movie by the doc that the time circuits will cause an issue at some point because they aren't working correctly. Yes, we remember this. Got to fix that thing. This, of course, leads to the DeLorean getting struck by lightning with the machine being transported to 1885. Was there any reason given what caused the time circuits to start glitching? Was it because of old Biff stealing the DeLorean early on? I don't think so. But I believe the time circuits, if I had to take a guess, because I do think that this has been covered in a comic book, and I'll look that up here in just a second. But I would think that because the time machine was literally made in Doc's garage with scrap parts and what was left of his family fortune, wear and tear, baby. It's the first of its kind. It's going to experience incredible trauma zipping through the space-time continuum with a nuclear blast. And some wires are going to short out, I would think. And think about this. It was 80. Was it an 81 DeLorean, right? That they used? Or was it 82 DeLorean? I think it was an 81. Somebody will correct me out there. But that's already a car with 4 years on it. And what did we ever see what the mileage was on the DeLorean? DeLorean time machine mileage. I don't think that we've ever seen that. We know how fast it needs to go. Let's see. DeLorean time machine. 1955. Blah, blah, blah. Something, something. Doc purchased. So these are some background on the time machine, just so you know. This is according to the backtothefuture.fandom.com, which I actually referenced a lot as well. Doc purchased the DeLorean DMC-12 from a seller named Robert, who had it advertised in the classified section of the August 11th, 1984 edition of the Hill Valley Telegraph. Another source claims Doc bought a used 1981 DeLorean from Rudy Russo for $13,000 at New Deal Used Cars Valley Road on February 3rd, 1984. This car may have become the second DeLorean time machine kept in Doc's secret lab after the destruction of the original. Okay, I don't know if that answers my question. Well, I was looking for the mileage. I'm trying to see real quick. Trapped in 55, blah, 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 blah. No. I just wonder what the odometer was on it. Was it brand new? Because if it was an 81, it can't be brand new. I mean, it could technically have never been driven before, but is it brand new? I don't think so. But I know that this was answered. So let me see. Okay. It was in the comic Jurassic Biff, BTTF, Untold Tales and Alternate Timelines, number 3. This is from Jurassic Biff. It is explained why we see this time circuits glitching out after Biff steals the time machine. Biff ended up giving the circuits a good old haymaker because he could not figure out how to use it normally. The damage caused the time circuits. Which had actually momentarily sent him millions of years into the past to the age of the dinosaurs, in which there was some shenanigan with a raptor-looking dinosaur before refueling the Mr. Fusion with some ancient flora and successfully driving the 1955. I got to read more of these comics. While the dinosaur segment can be taken as canon or not, I believe the time circuits haymaker is a good explanation of exactly why the time circuits would glitch out further. I say further because Doc mentions when we see the time circuits malfunction ourselves, something along the lines of, damn, gotta fix that thing. A dub of the comic segment can be here. So yeah. And then this is from the Reddit segment too. I like to think that Doc was always enamored with the Old West and tinkered with the idea of traveling there at some point. Perhaps he had entered the date and then canceled the trip, leaving that date in the time circuit's history and emerging when glitched. Love that idea. Johnny Hotshot said 4 days ago, I remember reading something about some kind of deleted scene or something with old man Peabody shooting at the DeLorean when he saw it flying around in the sky because he thought it was a spaceship and thought that damaged the time circuits. Not sure the truthfulness of that, blah, blah, blah. I heard that scene was scripted but never filmed as they could ever get the Peabody's actor to return for the sequel. That's a shocker. It was, okay, so this is from It's Arsenio. It says, it was never in the movie, but my headcanon is basically, well, it did crash into a barn and a brick wall at damn near 90. Something should be wrong with the car. And then someone responded to him and said it was also struck by lightning in part 1 and crashed afterward. So, you know, I think some of that is probably accurate as to why the DeLorean time circuits did not exactly do what we thought that they should. Now, this is another interesting one that I pulled up here about the a theory from the movie. And let me pull this up here. Desktop screenshot. Oop, wrong one. Here we go. Okay. So you know in Back to the Future Part 2, let me set the scene for everybody so everyone knows exactly what I'm talking about. In Back to the Future Part 2, we're in Hilldale. Officer Foley has already dropped off young Jennifer at the McFly house. We hear at some point Marty McFly, the older one, come home, and he goes into his little den there, his little office, And Needles, Douglas J, pops up on the screen, played incredibly by Flea. While Flea is talking to Michael J. Fox and asking him if he's in, and they're going back and forth about doing this or not, Needles looks over to the left. And it looks like he looks at somebody. Who is he looking at? And this isn't a question I really have a great answer to, other than maybe somebody in his gang, in his office clique. Because we see at the end of Back to the Future Part 3, Needles has a little clique. I'd like to have known more about Needles, just in general. What a great character that we don't really explore a whole hell of a lot. I think we're made to believe that Needles is Marty's Biff, his present-day Biff. And they definitely share a lot of characteristics together. I would have loved to seen them interact with one another, Biff and Needles, more, or at all. That would be a great... did they ever do it in the comics? That would be a great comic. Because I love Needles as a character. And I think I've read this on this podcast before. But I had an idea for... And whether this is good or not, I don't know. But it was an idea that I had for a Back to the Future sequel where Marty makes it big as a musician. His band, the Pinheads, have a big hit, The Power of Love. And Marty ends up being a one-hit wonder. And he uses the celebrity that he has left to get a job back in his hometown of Hill Valley as the afternoon or the morning drive host on KHLL. The radio station in Hill Valley, the top 40 station. And the caveat in it, the station is owned by Biff. And Biff, the program director for the station, Biff hires Needles as Marty's program director. So Marty's working for both Biff and Needles in my scenario of Back to the Future Part 4. And Doc is, of course, a renowned professor at the Hill Valley University. When I say it out loud, it doesn't sound crazy. I kind of like the idea, right? Of that being a Back to the Future sequel. Have I asked y'all before? I'm sure I have, because we've been doing this show together for almost 9 years. So at some point I had to have asked this. Can anyone out there send me their Back to the Future sequel pitch? I would love to read through pitches on the show. I know that y'all have some. I think I even did a Back to the Future 4 No Way Home pitch after I saw the Spider-Man movie of how they could do it. But I really like the idea of reading some of your ideas for a Back to the Future Part 4. You know what? I'm going to, right now, put that out. Email me, Brad Gilmore at can'twaitforever.com. I would love to read your ideas for a Back to the Future 4 script because we're going to finish reading Paradox here on the podcast. I'm actually think I'm going to close the season out with those episodes. But, man, would that be fun? Would that not be awesome? I need to check in with a few of my Back to the Future people, by the way. This podcast has made me realize that. However, I want to do that. But who is Needles looking at? Who do y'all think? I would like to know what y'all think about that. Because I can't figure it out, really. I would assume it's somebody in the office to answer the question. Somebody in the office, somebody who was working with Needles on this big sting operation. It'd been awesome if it's somebody that we know. But who do we really know that it could possibly be? It's not Jennifer. Why would it be Jennifer? George and Lorraine are in the house. Biff is stealing the time machine. Griff is in prison. So I'm trying to think of any character we were introduced to that it could possibly be. It would have to be an 85 contemporary of his, and we don't really meet a lot of those guys. So I don't know. I don't know who it is. Y'all let me know. But you know what? I want to put a bow on it right here because I want to know who y'all think or what y'all think a good pitch for Back to the Future 4 is. Email me, Brad Gilmore at Can't Wait Forever or can'twaitforever.com, or you can go to theboatbradgilmore.com. Send me a message that way so that we can talk about a Back to the Future 4. And you know what? Even better than writing it out, if y'all want to send in voice recordings so we can listen to your pitch of Back to the Future Part 4 or a Back to the Future reboot, Back to the Future TV series, whatever the idea that you have that you can come up with, please send that in. Please do it so that we can have a real fun podcast. Again, I want to continue season 10 as long as I possibly can. And with some fun ideas and some fun help from the pinheads out there, that would really go a far way with me. So send those in, Brad Gilmore at can'twaitforever.com, or you can email me at theboatbradgilmore.com. But guess what, guys? Until next time, I'm about to get out of here. I'm going to Miami for my wife's 30th birthday. We're about to live it up. Not really. I'm not a party guy. I sit here in my office and talk about movies made almost 40 years ago. that I wasn't alive for. But nevertheless, until next time, guys, I'm your friend in time, Brad Gilmore. This has been Back to the Future, the podcast. The only podcast looking back in time. The only trilogy of all time, Back to the Future. And I will see you again in the future.